Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Trump Tyranny Tracker. We're very excited. Olga Lautman is back. Hi, Olga. Thanks you for
Hi.
coming back. We missed you
Yeah,
yesterday.
I'm back.
You missed quite a night because quite a day because yesterday we landed up taking live coverage of Cyril Ramaphosa's meeting with Donald Trump, which turned out to be this incredible ambush. Just unbelievable to watch something like that in unfold live. I've never, in some ways it's great TV. In other ways, it's the worst kind of diplomacy in the world. But it's fascinating to see how Donald Trump is treating world leaders as they show up. Really mind-boggling and also full of lies. So much disinformation. I was just watching it. I mean, I'm from South Africa. I sort of know a little bit about what's going on, and I was like,
Just a little.
this is nonsense that he's saying. This is not right what he's doing. He's just putting out a lot of disinformation. So, anyhow, that's what we did without you. We missed
As
you though.
you noticed, my head is shaking because,
Yeah.
frankly, it's the most humiliating and embarrassing thing. And even though I was on the road all day yesterday, I do have, Sirius XM and had CNN on and heard the meeting. So I didn't see the visuals of the fake video later on. I saw, but I could not believe it. And frankly, it's so disgusting because, how does any leader come here? Putin will be he'll roll out a red carpet for him and like literally hand him the keys to the White House and a bedroom. And meanwhile, other leaders around the world, between Zelensky being ambushed and thrown out. Yesterday, literally, what I heard was identical. This was a planned
Oh yeah.
ambush. And that's it. And if I were a leader, like, just don't come. Don't,
I mean,
don't
why do you
come
want to
to.
go visit anybody that's going to land up ambushing you in this way? And in this particular case, as with Zelensky as well, ambushed with real disinformation. I mean,
Yes, yes, yes.
none of what he was showing was real. There is no genocide in South Africa. And the thing is about the ANC government there and Cyril Ramaphosa, I've known Cyril personally for 30 something years now. I was there when they were negotiating the start of South Africa's democratic future, when he was negotiating the constitution. I spoke to him on a daily basis. And I'm sure he doesn't remember me now. Maybe he does. I don't know. I haven't spoken to him recently. But the truth of it is, this man is a conciliatory figure, and like Mandela, is working to build a unified government in South Africa to stop any of this extremist kind of nonsense that they get from the Zuma wing or the other parties in South Africa. So, and he's got a government of national unity with a white South African agricultural minister who runs the Western Cape, this is very much a middle of the road kind of guy, and it's a smart, successful businessman as well. Like, not someone you embarrass in a setting like
It
that.
was
Just
so,
embarrassing.
so disgusting. And this shows when, the US, world power, is hijacked by extremists and conspiracy theorists. And everyone from Trump on down are all insane.
Yeah.
There's no other word to put it. They're insane. And basing foreign policy, if they were insane in their own right, and Trump was tweeting or whatever, truthing at 2 a.m. from his toilet, that's fine. But they are basing foreign policy based on lies, lies,
Mhm.
lies, lies, lies. And it's outrageous.
And inciting white nationalism, which is really what the whole
Yeah,
point about the entire exercise
exactly.
was. So,
Yeah.
just offensive stuff. But let's get on to today's Trump tyranny tracker. There's so much news going on. This is a really interesting story. A hacker who accessed a telemessage. That's the encrypted platform that was used by Trump's national security advisor, Mike Waltz. Everyone remembers that moment when everyone thought he was using Signal. It turned out to be it was a Signal clone called Telemessage, made by an Israeli firm. Well, those same hackers who managed to see what was on Mike Waltz's screen there also were able to see intercepted communications from over 60 US government officials, including FEMA staff, custom agents, diplomats, and Secret Service members. This is a really massive breach because it also exposed the message's sensitive metadata, which was told them who was talking and where they were. And it's just another counterintelligence failure, and obviously a victory for our adversaries. What does this all mean?
I mean, I, I don't even know where to begin. Signal Gate is not going away.
Mhm.
Literally every single cabinet member, between discussing the Houthi strike plans on Signal with Witkoff as a reminder, was added to the chat wall in Moscow,
Mhm.
to using Signal on their personal phone, to using this clone messaging app of Signal. I mean, this is obviously the Houthi strike plans weren't the only signal chat. They were conducting apparently, sensitive classified discussions on Ukraine, um, on various other matters with his wife present, with, his lawyer present. I mean, people who have a zero need to know on US, classified information, nor do they have the clearance. And here we have now this telemessage, that literally now think about it, the National Security Advisor, who now got, discarded to the UN, with, if you remember that chat, Tulsi Gabbard, he had just taken a call with her prior, and you saw their communications in that screenshot, using an app that was hacked, that has access to, frankly, everything that you mentioned, and I'm
Mm.
sure there's even more. And it shows you I mean, we put our military on the front lines around the globe, and the fact that these people are so careless and don't give a shit, who it compromises, whether our military is safe. And, I keep coming back, and again, I don't want to get conspiratorial, but, this signal gate discussed a chat, a strike on the Houthis. First time ever, we had our ship that freaking lost not one, two
Hmm.
planes.
Yeah,
We've
it
never
fell
had, I've never
overboard,
even
right?
knew a
Hmm.
warplane can fall off a ship.
Yeah,
And it happened two of them in the region within a week apart of each other. And I believe one of them, it was confirmed that they were responding to a Houthi attack and had to swerve and whatnot. So again, this puts real lives in danger. And the fact that they're all so reckless, and the fact that the whole Republican Party is covering up for this and not pushing to see or change this behavior, because you would think after Signalgate everything, at least they would modify this insanity. But no, what's his name, Waltz, proved to us, now he was like, forget Signal, let's use even a more unsafe app, you know
it's
to
crazy.
have other national security conversations.
This happened right after Signalgate was exposed, at the time when the president himself was saying people should stop using Signal completely. And here Waltz is in a cabinet meeting using something that's a lot like Signal, but not as secure, made by the Israelis, which is really questionable. And so, like, what's going on? Why do you not get the memo from the president saying not to use these kinds of things? You keep doing it. No wonder he's no longer there. But my
But if
information.
it was him, what about Hegseth? I
Right. I
mean,
mean, look, there's so much information. Apparently, he had 20 signal chats, Waltz did, for every region in the National Security Council, that every region in the country, in the
there you
world,
go.
was covered on his signals. So if you're Russia or China or anybody else that wants to know what America's doing, you got a direct pipeline to that information. A federal judge has ruled that the Trump administration violated a March court order by deporting 8 migrants, including individuals from Myanmar, Laos, and Vietnam, on a flight reportedly bound for South Sudan. I can't believe that that's where they're sending people. The judge said migrants were not given a meaningful opportunity to raise fears of persecution or torture as required by law. Some were sent to countries under U.S. do not travel advisories. Attorneys say one migrant has effectively disappeared. This represents another direct violation of due process. It's also a dangerous pattern that the Trump administration keeps ignoring the courts and their orders.
Absolutely. This story, again, I was watching, I happened to be up as New York Times broke the story the night before, and then yesterday there was more in. And I mean, this was frankly something that you see in Russia. A judge, um, well, let's start. The New York Times broke the story that the lawyer for one of the migrants who was being held in a detention center had a video meeting um, before yesterday in the morning. They go to the meeting, the client is not there. They check the registry, completely gone. I mean, talk about
Disappeared.
disappearing people.
Wow.
Um, and then they realized that there were at least upwards of a dozen people who were just disappeared. No one had any information. So they went to the court. The judge was so furious that he literally ended, put an order to the Department of Justice, I believe Department of Justice lawyer there, um, to immediately bring this plane immediately. He was like, anyone from the pilot on up will be held in contempt if this plane is not brought back." So now you have, Trump literally going and picking people off the street or out of detention centers, putting them on a plane. The courts, many of them, blocked the use of one, the Alien Enemies Act, two, of just deporting or disappearing people without proper procedures. And this, I mean, we are in a constitutional crisis.
This
If
is one.
Trump and his officials completely ignore court orders. I mean, and this is why, like, these are disappearances. The deportation has an actual process. A deportee has due process, has the right to appear even before an administrative judge and have an order issued. This is not what we're seeing. This is disappearances. And this is what happens in Russia. This is what happened in Syria. This is what happens in any authoritarian regime where there is no law, and they do what they want. And I mean,
These.
this is extremely, extremely, I mean, and then, sorry, this is
No,
not part of it, but just to add on, Christy Nome, this is DHS was asked, "Oh, what is habeas corpus?" And she completely rewrote the definition, saying, "Oh, that just grants the president power to
yeah, which of
disappear
course
people."
it's not that at all.
It's
Now it's interesting. These people come from Myanmar, Laos, and Vietnam, and being sent to South Sudan, which is like a war torn part of the
on the
world.
verge of a
Yeah,
civil war.
and so the uncertainty and the risk and the danger that they're being sent to is unbelievable. I mean, they're basically could be being sent to their deaths. This is not just being deported
Absolutely.
out of the country. And of course, if they
Absolutely.
can't go back home because Myanmar is a dictatorship, and no one wants, and all these other countries that we mentioned are not necessarily. Vietnam is much safer, of course, but these countries are not necessarily places you can send these people back. That's why they do have these do not deport orders for those countries. So sending them to a war zone is insane. It's just, I mean, beyond just the due process and beyond the constitutional crisis, you're sending people to their deaths, which is basically murder, and they're just doing it. They're just doing it regardless of the fact that these judges are telling them not to do it. It's stunning.
Or a gulag. I mean,
Yeah.
entering the US, first of all, is not a criminal, it's a civil
Hmm.
offense. Or if you break, any do not stay orders in the US, I mean, this is civil. The fact that they like, who is the United States to wake up and decide that this person who illegally entered the country deserves to be sent to a gulag in El Salvador and imprisoned for life with no contact with family, the lawyers, or
Or
anyone. I mean,
languages. The language would be completely different. The prisoners would be
everything.
under the control of people who don't even speak their language. You
And
know,
just to add one thing, recently, even though I'm not a fan of this institute, the Cato Institute just literally put out a report showing the people who were disappeared to El Salvador, and I believe it was upwards of like 50%, zero criminal record, entered the country legally on an asylum claim. Um, and that's it. So now it's not only, just people who are here illegally. They are disappearing people who are following the law and had, asylum cases pending. I
and
mean,
welcoming
this
white
is,
South African racists at the same time. I mean, it's not hard to see what's going on here. This is ridiculous.
yeah.
Um, let's move on to our next story. Our third one is focusing on Trump's launching a new civil rights fraud initiative. This is in order to investigate universities with DEI policies using the False Claims Act to target institutions that receive federal funds. This is unbelievable. Deputy Attorney Todd Blanche accused schools of fostering anti Semitism and violating human rights and student rights. He says Harvard is already under federal investigation, as we know, and has sued over what it calls retaliatory action. So the administration is now using this taxpayer funded agencies to strong arm schools into dropping their DEI programs, or they face severe punishment, or they say these fraud charges. This is, well, I don't know what you have to say about this. This is incredible.
I mean, if you go to any college, university, kindergarten, elementary school in Russia, there's a state program, and this is what you are exposed to. And I mean, the state program is very radical and extremist, and basically you're indoctrinated from, the first moment you step into school. Um, Here, Trump is trying to enforce his ideological agenda and force universities and colleges to conform to these extremist ideas. And the fact that he's going, he started off with elite universities, but the plan is to go to every single local college, 2 year, 4 year college, elite universities. And this is basically, someone put in the chat, "Make America white again." This is, I'm sorry, but this is what it is.
It is. It's a
They want to
racist law.
erase the, you see from what they're doing, between the government websites, erasing and then temporarily restoring, the history of the contributions of the Black community and women historically. And basically, they just want to, I mean, in Russia, I can't even count how many times history has been rewritten to fit their agenda. Here, this is the same thing. And once you take control of universities and colleges, you can enforce what is written and you can rewrite history as you want it. You want to erase slavery? That's it. The new history books will say, slavery never happened. And, we raised that horrific stain, that on America out of the books. And then people, anyone who mentions it, I mean, then the university will be punished. I mean, this is extremely dangerous. And, we see they've been going after Columbia and after Harvard and frankly every university. And they're using, what gets me the most is using the guise of anti-Semitism.
Mm.
This is a administration that has literally, there was the report I put in my tracker of every single person in top roles who is tied to extremist, white supremacist, and Nazi supporters. I mean, so give me a break that they care about anti Semitism as they stack everyone with people, including Ed Martin, who was, propping up and cheering on a Nazi sympathizer who literally made a video of himself, with Hitler's mustache. So, I mean, this is what gets me the most, to use shoes as an excuse for their white supremacist, crackdown.
And at this whole you're absolutely right, and thank you for pointing that out. But also the DI policies extend to a lot of the corporations, like the Verizon was
Absolutely.
forced to remove. So what you've got, if you're a black person, is the entire pipeline to success in America is being cut off for you. You can't go universities, and if you can't go to those top universities, you're not going to get the big jobs or any decent jobs at any of these corporations. And then on top of that, these corporations are being forced to cut their DEI policies, which means you no longer have access to the same, even slight, even though they were never really the same, but some opportunities that you might have had access to that were addressing the redresses of the past. I mean, this is
This
the sickness of all of this is sending people into a lifetime of poverty, basically, and restricting all the opportunities to just white people. I mean, what can you
white
say?
men,
White
not
men,
even
yeah.
people, white
Yeah.
men.
It's
Um,
just appalling.
this this is the biggest attack on civil rights progress we have ever seen in this country. We
Mhm.
made gains, definitely not enough, nowhere where we should be, but we made gains. And the fact that they're reversing all of this, erasing this, firing all the lawyers from, the civil rights enforcement divisions from various agencies. And okay, yeah, I mean, on top, as horrific as this all is, if this stayed inside of America, that's one thing. You think these psychopaths, including Marco Rubio, who I want to remind his grandfather came here illegally. illegally.
Hmm.
Um, he is pushing our European allies to enforce the same, any corporations dealing with them, that they have to enforce the same anti, quote unquote DEI. I mean, it's gross.
The through line to what we saw yesterday with Cyril Ramaphosa and these false allegations against, what they said in South Africa, to all of this is quite clear. What they're building here is an apartheid state. What they're trying to do is basically, without saying it, they're trying to go back to an apartheid system and institute it into a world superpower, which is just unthinkable, really. Having lived in that apartheid state, I can tell you that it's not tenable. The idea is not a good idea at all. But
They're not going to succeed. They're not
the
going to succeed because this is a multinational country. And
mhm.
what makes America great is the fact that we have immigrants from every part of the world, and that we had the best of the best come here, and the brightest, to contribute their talents to build this country. So, they can try, but it's not going to
you
succeed
know,
because you cannot erase everyone from here. I mean, I actually looked it up. I think the population of just white men is like, I don't know, maybe 100 million, if I'm correct. I mean, it's a very small percentage of the general population. What are you going to have left in this country?
what the other thing that I find really, I keep thinking about and why people don't seize on this point a lot more. When you create a country like this, where there's race and no human rights and no judicial rights and no due process, what you're also killing is capitalism. Because no one's
Yeah,
going to want to come here, because why would they come here? It'll
no,
be an awful
no,
place. And no people want to start their own businesses here because
no.
they can't really own those businesses. They'll be owned by the state, and you'll have no creativity or freedom of speech. So there's no incentive to try and do anything. Besides, you'll be so surveilled by Elon Musk and the company. No idea you'll have will ever be your idea. So it kills capitalism. And these are the GOP. This is the Republican Party of America killing capitalism, which is so, everything I'd learned about the GOP was that they were supposedly pro-capitalist. But actually what they're doing
Mm.
is just destroying the very bread and butter that made America. It's just horrific. Um,
The grand old Putin party. Welcome to
yes,
Russia. This is
exactly.
exactly what you have inside of Russia.
Shocking. You'll be back at 3 o'clock with me because we're doing the 5 stack. I don't know how you're going to stay awake, but hopefully you will stay awake because there's a good show we're going to do. Dean's away still, but we're going to do a big show about the so-called big beautiful bill. Really, what's inside of it, the five most shocking things you will ever hear about. And at 3 o'clock, you and I are going to go through it and reveal exactly the five things it'll make you want to scream at the end of the show
And
because
I
it's
just
really
want to
horrific.
add,
Yeah,
sorry to cut
go
you
ahead.
off.
No, go ahead.
I just want to add one more item we
Yeah, sure.
didn't
Oh,
cover that's
sorry.
important, just to add to the retribution tracker, which I
Yes.
really should add a retribution tracker. Chris Cuomo is the latest to be under investigation. Surprise, surprise. I am not a fan of him.
Andrew Cuomo. Yeah,
Andrew, my
yeah.
God, Chris
It happens.
Cuomo
Chris
went.
Cuomo's brother. Yeah.
Andrew Cuomo is the latest to be under investigation. I'm not a fan of his. I'm a New Yorker. But the fact that Trump is using the federal government to basically interfere in New York's local election by putting him under investigation after clearing Eric Adams from a legitimate investigation is insane. And he's the latest one to add to the long list. We keep putting together a list of people under investigation, and that I just wanted to add because just
Yeah.
the day before we had Letitia James, we had the arrest of Congresswoman McIvers, we had the Chicago mayor who's under investigation, and I mean the list keeps growing, and of course every day a new political target.
It's going to keep happening. There's no doubt in my mind that
Yeah,
is just going to increase. They've built the system and now they're executing. Well, as
I'll be back at
always,
3
we'll see you
p.m.
at
I look
3.
forward.
Okay. We'll keep smiling our way through this because it's the only way to do this. Thank you for being here on the Trump Tyranny Tracker today, everybody.
Eastern time, sorry. At
Yes,
3
Eastern
p.m.
time.
Eastern time in
Yes, in
35 minutes.
35
We'll be
minutes.
back.
We'll be ready by then. No problem. All right. Thanks for being here on the Trump Tyranny Tracker, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks for being here. Bye bye, Olga.
Bye.